They laughed, they doubted, they whispered when you walked by. You could hear them, even when they spoke under their breath, even when they thought their words would never reach you. It wasn't just the sound of their voices. It was the weight behind them, the smirks, the way they looked at you like you were nothing, like you were just a passing shadow in a world too bright for you to belong. They dismissed you before you ever had a chance. They wrote your story without ever handing you the pen. You felt it every moment, every rejection, every door that was slammed before you even reached the handle. You watched as the world chose others, stronger, louder, more polished. They never saw you, never even considered that maybe, just maybe, you had something inside you too. Something waiting, something clawing at the edges, something they should have feared, but they didn't, because they never looked close enough. They never thought you could be a threat. They said you were weak, that you didn't have it in you. And for a moment, you believed them. You let their words sink into your bone, let their doubt coil around your soul like chains. You carried the weight of their judgment, dragged it behind you like a corpse of a life you never got to live. You tried to fight it, tried to push back, but every time you rose, the world was there to knock you back down. They enjoyed it, watching you struggle, watching you doubt yourself, because as long as you were broken, they were safe. You remember the nights when you questioned everything, when the silence was so loud, it swallowed you whole, when you stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was it, if this was all you would ever be. You remember the moments when you stood at the edge looking down into the abyss and wondered if it was easier to just let go, because the pain of fighting and the pain of trying, the pain of constantly being overlooked, it was unbearable. You weren't just invisible, you were nothing, but pain is a seed, and in the dark, something was growing. At first it was small, a whisper inside your chest, a flicker of something you couldn't quite define. It wasn't hope. Hope had long since been crushed beneath the weight of their expectations. No, this was something different, something sharper, something raw. It was anger, it was hunger. It was the realization that if the world refused to give you a place, you would carve one out yourself, with blood, with sweat, with fire. They thought they broke you. They thought they buried you so deep you would never claw your way back to the surface. But they didn't know what you were made of. They didn't know that the darkness they threw you into wasn't your end. It was your beginning, because the thing about being left in the shadows, you learned to see in ways they never could. You learned to navigate a world they would never survive in. You learned to become something else. They underestimated you, and that was their first mistake. You were drowning, not in water, but in something thicker, something heavier, the weight of doubt, the suffocating grip of fear. Every step forward felt like sinking deeper into quicksand, every breath a battle against the invisible hands trying to pull you under. And for a while, you let it happen. You let the current take you. You convinced yourself it was easier that way, to stop fighting, to stop hoping, to just disappear into the background. After all, hadn't life already decided you weren't meant to win? But somewhere inside, a voice whispered, "Not yet." It wasn't loud. It wasn't a battle cry. It was barely more than a flicker in the vast emptiness that had become your mind. But it was there, a single ember buried under the ashes of your failures, a quiet defiance, refusing to die. Yet even with that whisper, even with that ember, the war inside you raged on. The enemy wasn't just them, it was you, the voice of your past, the voice of your mistakes, the voice of every time you tried and failed. It told you that you weren't strong enough, that no matter how hard you fought, the outcome would always be the same, that you were born to lose, and you almost listened, almost let yourself believe that this was all you were destined to be, a shadow, a forgotten name, another body in the crowd. But then one night, you caught your own reflection, and you didn't recognize the person staring back. Your eyes were dull, your shoulders slumped. There was no fire, no rage, no life, just emptiness, a hollowed-out version of the person you were supposed to become. And in that moment, something inside you snapped. You hated what you saw, not because of how they treated you, not because of what the world had done, but because of what you had allowed yourself to become. Weak, defeated, waiting for permission to rise when no one was ever going to give it. Enough. No more being the quiet one. No more shrinking yourself to fit their expectations. No more standing in the shadows, waiting for someone to notice. It was time. Time to remind them who you are. Time to become something they could no longer ignore, because they thought you were done. They thought they had won, but they didn't realize the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Something changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive, but it was undeniable. A shift deep in your bones, like the slow ignition of a fire that had been waiting for the right moment to burn. For too long, you mistook your silence for weakness. You mistook your hesitation for cowardice. But now you see the truth. You were never weak. You were patient. You were waiting. And now, the world isn't ready for what's coming. The fire spreads, consuming everything that once held you back. Every doubt, every insecurity, every moment you spent questioning whether you were enough. You aren't here to ask for permission anymore. You aren't waiting for validation. The old version of you, the one who hesitated, the one who second-guessed, that version is dead. And from the ashes, something new is rising. Transformation isn't gentle, it's violent. It's the cracking of old bones to make way for something stronger. It's fire melting down steel, reshaping it into a weapon, and that's what's happening to you. The fire inside is forging something unbreakable. You've been through the suffering. You've endured the pain. Now it's time to wield it. You wake up earlier, you train harder, you cut off distractions, silence the noise, and sharpen your focus like a blade. It's not about proving them wrong anymore. It's about proving yourself right. Every step forward is an act of war against the person you used to be, the one who let others define them, the one who let fear win. But they don't see it, not yet. They still think you're the same. They still expect you to fold like you did before. They watch from a distance, waiting for the moment you'll crack under pressure, waiting for the moment you'll break. Let them think that, because by the time they realize what's really happening, it will already be too late. The path to greatness is a lonely road. No one tells you that part. They paint the picture of glory, the applause, the respect, the triumph. But they never warn you about the silence. They never tell you that the higher you climb, the fewer hands will reach out to pull you up. The air gets thinner at the top. The crowd grows quieter, and the faces that once surrounded you begin to fade into the distance. You feel it, every severed bond, every conversation that never happens, every message that goes unanswered. Cutting off the weight was supposed to feel like freedom, but it feels like death. The people who once stood close now watch from afar, whispering that you've changed, that you're too cold, too distant. They don't understand. They never will, because this journey isn't about them. It's about what's buried inside of you. Every morning before the world wakes up, you rise in silence. There's no applause, no validation, just you and the grind. You learn to find comfort in the discomfort, aching muscles, empty rooms, the endless repetition of small habits no one will ever see. The suffering doesn't break you. It becomes your companion. Each sacrifice carves something harder, sharper into your soul. The hunger grows louder. The vision becomes clearer. But the old life doesn't let go easily. It whispers to you in the dead of night, calling you back to comfort, back to the familiar, back to the version of yourself that never had to feel this pain. The temptation lingers, wrapping around your mind like a snake, but you don't listen. You light a match, throw it behind you, and burn the bridge to everything that ever held you back. The suffering carves you into something they won't recognize. You realize now, this pain isn't punishment. It's preparation. Every tear, every lonely night, every ounce of doubt, it's shaping you into something relentless, something unstoppable. They think the isolation will break you, but they don't know. This silence is where monsters are made. They still laugh, they still doubt, they still look at you with the same smug certainty, convinced that nothing has changed. They don't see it, the way your eyes have hardened, the way your movements have sharpened, the way the fire inside you has grown into something untamed. They're blind to the storm gathering on the horizon, too wrapped up in their ignorance to notice the air getting heavier, the winds shifting, the quiet before everything erupts. You don't correct them. You don't warn them. Let them think you're the same. Let them believe their words still have weight, that their doubt still has power. Because while they waste their breath underestimating you, you've been sharpening your teeth in the dark. Growth isn't always loud. Strength isn't always visible. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the world is the beast that waits in silence, unseen, unheard, growing hungrier with each passing day. And that's what you've become, a force they dismissed, a threat they never accounted for. While they were sleeping, while they were wasting time with empty talk, you were building. You were forging something inside yourself that can't be broken, can't be shaken, can't be stopped. The first victories come quietly. They're not grand, not earth-shattering, yet they happen in the moments no one sees. The weight that feels lighter, the discipline that no longer wavers, the way your mind no longer bows to weakness. The shifts are subtle, but undeniable. You feel it, how your own reflection is beginning to change. The old version of you, the one who hesitated, the one who let their words sink in, is nowhere to be found. But they still don't see it. They think time has passed, that you've moved on, that nothing ever came of your fire. Let them think that. Let them laugh while they still can, because the ground is starting to shake beneath their feet. And by the time they realize what's coming, it will already be too late. Then the day comes. No announcement, no warning, just a moment, so small, so unassuming, that the world barely notices. But you notice. You feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the way your footsteps land heavier than before. It's the shift, the moment the tide turns. The world blinks, and you step forward. At first they don't understand. They hear your name, and still attach it to the version of you they thought they knew. They still expect you to falter, to stumble, to fold under the same pressure that once crushed you. But then they see you, really see you, and something changes. The laughter dies on their lips. The smirks fade. The confidence in their eyes flickers. Not gone, not yet, but shaken. Because for the first time, they don't recognize you. The weakness they mocked, the hesitation they counted on, it's nowhere to be found. The fire they ignored, it's standing before them, burning hotter than they ever imagined. They underestimated the fire inside you, and now they feel the heat. The first taste of power is intoxicating. The first moment of shock, of fear, of realization in their eyes. It's what you've waited for. It's the proof that every sacrifice was worth it. But you don't give them everything. Not yet. No, you let them sit in their uncertainty. Let them scramble. Let them whisper. Let them try to convince themselves that this is temporary, that surely you'll break soon. But you won't, and they can feel it. You walk past them now, and it's different. The energy shifts. They don't meet your gaze the same way. They don't speak so carelessly anymore. They can't, because they don't know what's coming. And that uncertainty, it terrifies them. Let them wonder. Let them panic, because the storm is just beginning to rise. And when it finally hits, none of them will be ready. They tried to keep you in the dirt, tried to bury you under their doubt, their laughter, their indifference. But what they didn't realize was that you weren't dying. You were growing. And now, you are the storm that shakes the ground beneath them. This is the reckoning, the moment they swore would never come, the moment they never thought you were capable of reaching. And yet here you stand, stronger, sharper, unstoppable. The whispers have turned to silence, the arrogance has turned to unease, and the ones who once mocked you, they're watching now, eyes wide, jaws clenched, pretending they aren't afraid of what you've become. This isn't just about proving them wrong anymore. It's bigger than that. This is about erasing the limits they placed on you, about shattering every expectation they held. You aren't just better than they thought. You are beyond what they could even imagine. And then comes the confrontation, not with them, but with the ghost of who you used to be, the version of you they underestimated, the version of you that hesitated, that doubted, that believed their lies. You see that past self now, standing before you like a shadow clinging to the edges of your mind. It looks at you with wide eyes, unsure, afraid, and for a moment you remember the pain, the struggle, the long nights, but you don't flinch, because that version of you is gone. Look at their faces, the same ones that laughed at you, the ones who dismissed you, the ones who never believed. Now they have nothing to say. The silence is louder than any apology, louder than any excuse. You could destroy them. You could rub their faces in their own ignorance, remind them of every word they ever spoke against you. But you don't need to. The victory isn't in revenge. The victory is in the knowing that they see it now, knowing that they were wrong, and knowing that there's nothing they can do to stop you anymore. You are not the same. You are something else entirely. And they finally understand. The weight of their doubt, their laughter, their rejection, it no longer touches you. Once upon a time, their words had power. Their opinions shaped your world. Their approval was something you chased like a starving dog. But that version of you is gone. The timid, uncertain, fragile shell they underestimated has been burned away, and in its place stands something unshakable. You walk differently now, shoulders back, eyes steady. You don't seek permission. You don't ask for validation. You command your space, and they feel it. The energy around you has changed, and even those who once looked down on you can't ignore it. For a moment, you look back, not to dwell, but to recognize the distance between who you were and who you are now. The old you would have held on to the past, replayed the pain, searched for closure in places where it was never meant to be found. The new you understands. The suffering wasn't a curse, it was the forge, the fire that shaped you, the storm that made you relentless. You see your past self now, standing in the distance, smaller, weaker, eyes filled with doubt. You don't hate them, you don't pity them, you simply nod, acknowledging the struggle, the fight, the journey that brought you here. And then without hesitation, you turn away. Because that chapter is over. That version of you no longer exists. The old you would have craved their approval, would have waited for them to acknowledge the transformation, to admit they were wrong. The new you doesn't care, because you are free, finally, truly free, and nothing can touch you anymore. There's no going back. You burned the past, and the ashes scatter in the wind. The roads that once led you back to comfort, to weakness, to the life they tried to keep you in, gone. And you don't mourn them. You don't look back. You walk forward, leaving behind everything that no longer serves you. This is the moment when most hesitate, when the temptation to return, to seek closure, to prove one last thing to the world, tries to sink its claws into their mind. But you are not most people. You understand now. This was never about them. It was never about their validation, their recognition, or their apologies. It was about you. It was about becoming something greater than the limitations they placed on you. And now, you carry something far heavier than their words. You carry power. And power, real power, comes with a burden, because the world will try again. There will be new enemies, new doubts, new challenges designed to break you. The difference? This time, you'll be ready. This time, when the storms rise, when the weight of the world tries to drag you down, you won't flinch, because you know who you are now, and there is nothing that can take that from you. You hold all the lessons deep in your bones, the suffering, the rejection, the hunger. It wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. It carved wisdom into your soul, gave you clarity, gave you the kind of resilience that can't be shaken. You are sharper now, smarter, harder to break, and the world feels it. They sense it in the way you move, in the way you exist. This is someone who cannot be controlled. The final test stands before you, not in the form of an enemy, but in a choice. The choice to leave it all behind, to stop seeking proof, to stop looking for old ghosts, to step fully, completely into the life you built with your own hands. And you do, without hesitation, without regret, because the old world is beneath you now. They underestimated you, now they wish they hadn't. The same voices that once mocked you now speak your name in hushed tones. The same faces that once smirked now avoid your gaze. And the same people who once dismissed you as nothing now fear what you've become. But it's too late for them, too late to take back their words, too late to undo the doubt they planted, too late to rewrite the past. Because every laugh, every rejection, every moment they counted you out, it all became fuel. It all became the fire that burned away who you were and forged something unstoppable in its place. You are the proof that pain is not an ending, it's a beginning, that failure is not a curse, it's a weapon, that the ones who are counted out, ignored, rejected, they are the ones who rise the highest. And now, as you stand here, unshaken, unbreakable, undeniable, they finally understand. But this isn't just about you. There are others out there, just like you once were, still doubted, still dismissed, still lost in the darkness, searching for a way out. And now, you are the storm they need. You are the fire that will show them the way. So now, it's their turn. Now, it's your turn to rise, to prove them wrong, to make them learn the hard way. Because the world will always underestimate the ones it fears the most, and it will always regret it.